Hey everybody, welcome back to our Kratom Addiction and Recovery Daily Devotional series. So we're in the first chapter of Job, and we left off yesterday where we were talking about Job's tests. And we looked at how that relates to our experience in kratom addiction and recovery. And today we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to talk about how Job handled the first round of tests that he's going to be going through. So we are going to pick up in chapter 1, verse 20. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship, and he said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Praise the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Man, that's so deep, and that is so powerful and beautiful. So Job just lost all of his children, all of his livelihood, and his response is so beautiful. And if you imagine that, like, he stood up and he tore his robe in grief, and then he shaved his head. You know, shaving our heads is an act of complete vulnerability. And the fact that he did that and then fell to the ground to worship, it's also, you know, shaving his head is an act of submission. And then he says this beautiful, I have always loved this verse. I love it so much. I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Praise the name of the Lord. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. That is so true, and it is so deep. I could ponder on it for days. So let's break this down and look at this and how it applies to our situations. Yesterday, we talked about the tests that Job was going through and why he was going through those tests. We talked about the nature of good and evil. We talked about how our own situations in our addiction and recovery processes, what that looks like, and why we could have possibly ended up in them. And we looked at how they are ultimately tests. And we looked at who is responsible for allowing those tests to happen ultimately, which is God. And we reminded ourselves of the sovereignty of God, meaning that He is completely in control. And we also reminded ourselves that all things do truly work for good, and that all of these tests and these challenges that we're going through have great opportunity to work out for good. And I just want to bring up right now that a lot of times we're not going to know how things are going to work out. We're not going to know how long things are going to take. You know, with Job, he lost all of his kids. And for some of us, we have lost people and things that cannot be replaced. You know, things don't work out all the time where you get exactly the thing that you lost back again. But I've seen it in my own life, and I am seeing it still play out as we speak, that what was lost will be regained in some way, in some form. And it a lot of times when you lose people, you may not get that exact person back again, but you do, as life ends up playing out, get something in its place. So I want to encourage and uplift for a second about these tests and these challenges. And so as we are looking at the end of this chapter today, like, how can we apply this to our lives and our situations and our addiction and recovery? You know, the way that Job responded to this, I feel like is like a model of how we should strive to respond to our challenges. Y'all, I am going through this with you. I am in recovery with you. I am flesh and blood. I am flawed and imperfect. I make mistakes every day that when I fall to my knees in my prayer time and I am feeling convicted about like the things that I know that I can be doing better, you know, the ways that I know that I can be responding to my challenges and my tests better, and I go before the Lord and I ask him for his help and I ask him for his forgiveness. So I want to let you know that, like, as we go through this together, I'm not here preaching. I'm not here saying, oh, this is, you know, what you need to do, or I'm so perfect and this is what I do, because it is not. I am flesh and blood, and I live in this world, but I am not of it. The same as with you. And I have challenges and I have tests every single day where I wish I could say that I perfectly, you know, live this model of Job's beautiful expression of his faith in this. I wish that I could say that I do that every time, but I am, you know, human, and I have my challenges as well. And so I'm here with you, going through this study with you, recognizing about myself. I may be going on my 3rd year of recovery here, I think in like a week or something, but I still go through challenges every single day and tests every single day. It may not take on the same shape as like when I was in my kratom addiction and I was like losing all of this stuff to my kratom addiction, but I still go through tests and challenges. And I'm looking at this together with you, you know, and like, how can we apply this to our lives? I just had a situation recently where I was being tested in a relationship with somebody where I didn't know if I was going to be able to communicate with them clearly, and it ended up just being this big miscommunication and a big misunderstanding. And I, instead of being patient, I was patient with them outwardly, but internally I was like freaking out and getting pissed off. And it ended up playing out, and thank God, you know, outwardly I was being patient and I was being understanding and I was continuing to communicate, you know, in different ways so that they would hopefully understand. And so we ended up working it out. And then when it passed and when it was going on and I just had all this internal like turmoil over it, like, you know, this person did this and they didn't, you know, hold up to their end of the deal, and they said they were going to do this at this time, and, you know, this, and this, and I'm internally just like so pissed off, and I'm talking to my husband about it, and I'm like, no, you know, I don't want to move forward and do anything more with this person, because if this is how they handle this, then they're going to handle other things like this. And yes, this is not losing, you know, everything to kratom or, you know, a test like that, but it was truly a test, and I felt it inside. I was like, man, you know, I'm getting so upset about this, and it was over something kind of stupid. And I was like, this is something, and I said it to my husband. I was like, me getting this upset about this, that I'm supposed to be learning something. I'm supposed to be recognizing something here, and I just can't pinpoint it. And so that I ended up like working it out with the person. Everything is fine. Everything is good. I didn't lose my temper or anything, but internally and like, to my husband, I was not in my best form. And I realized after that, like, I didn't handle this test the right way. I, as what Job says, he fell to the ground in worship. He fell to the ground in submission. And I was thinking that because I did not pray during any of this that was going on. And I was thinking, I did like a little, internal, like, God, help me with this. But like, I needed to like, shave my head, not literally, but, figuratively, and fall to the ground in worship and not focus on the problem and the test. I needed to be focusing on God and worshiping God and remembering the impermanence of the situation, remembering the impermanence of this test and challenge that I was going to. And that's what Job says in this, naked have I come out of my mother's womb, and naked will I return. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord is the KJV version of it, which we're not reading right now. And I love that version of it so much. And what that's talking about is that when we're born, we don't have anything. When we leave, we're not going to have anything. And so holding on to these things that we have in our lives so tightly, whether they be, our relationships, whether they be our material possessions, maybe it's, a job or something. Or for me, like, I was holding on to like, I was just like not into how this person ended up interacting with a commitment that they initially made with me. And I was just holding on to this, and I was focusing on that aspect of it and not on God. And when I look back to relate it on a more, relatable level to kratom addiction and recovery, sharing a little bit about my experience, that when I was in the ending of my addiction and my taper, and then in my recovery process, which I'm still in, but especially the first year and a half of my recovery process, like, I was being challenged and tested every single moment of every single day. And did I pass all of those tests and challenges with flying colors? No, I didn't. But I had many, many times and many moments where I did just fall to the ground in submission. And I was able to, even in the hard times, to focus on that, like, this is impermanent. Like, this test and this challenge is not going to last forever. I lost my dad, and I lost another close family member that it ripped my heart out of my chest when I lost these people. I still feel the pain from it. But when I was able to focus on God throughout this, because I was navigating grief as well as going through my recovery process. And when I was able to focus on God and focus on worshiping God, was when I was able to like move forward in the process. And so that's the point of what we're talking about today. And we've talked about this before, how worship is a weapon in the battle against addiction. Because when we are in our addiction and when we're in our recovery, it's really easy to get swallowed up in it, in the pain, in the challenge, in the test, in the suffering of it. It is so easy to do that. It's natural to do that. Our brains and our bodies are in a state that are putting us in this place and this perspective of pain and suffering and not knowing how long it's gonna last, the uncertainty of it. And so we are 100% being challenged and being tested. And we can get swallowed up in that. And it's natural to get swallowed up in it, because of how we're feeling. But the reason why worship is such a weapon is because it takes our focus off of that and it puts it on God. And that's the point of today, is no matter what your tests or your challenges that you're going through, let's look at Job. Let's look at the example of Job and how he handled losing all of his children and his livelihood, where he fell to the ground in submission to God. And he looked at the impermanence of it. And then he worshiped God. And that is what is going to help you through this process. It's okay to get overwhelmed sometimes. It's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to wonder how long it's going to last. None of us are going to be perfect. But the point is that we make an effort to do what Job did, which is submit ourselves to God and the sovereignty of God and his will, and know that this is imperfect. Know that we came naked from our mother's wombs, and that naked we shall return when we die, and that the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And praising him and saying, blessed be the name of the Lord. I praise you. I worship you. When we can worship under those circumstances, that's the most powerful kind of worship that there is. The most organic, pure, true worship that there is. And that is one of the ultimate weapons in this battle against our addictions. So this is something that I really encourage you to think about for a little bit, even as we move forward in our study this week. Keep thinking about this. And when you're in your darkest moments, and when you are up against the wall, whether you're on your taper and it's uncomfortable, whether you're, have made your final jump and you're in the acutes, or whether you're in the long-term recovery where you are in the anhedonia and in the wilderness of that whole space and not knowing how long it's gonna last. I really encourage you that in your darkest moments to think about this, to think about, regardless of the tests that you're going through, that worshiping God is integral to this process, and it will transform your pain into something good. So please think about this, you guys, and just because we move on tomorrow, don't stop thinking about it, because this is one of the most important parts of this book and this study that we're doing. So this was a heavy couple days, and I know that, but this is all good things that are going to help us to become better people. And God is so good, and that's the point of all of it. And God is in control of all of this. So think about this and let us know how you're doing in the comments section below if you want to. And I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow as we continue. Okay, bye.